all the adults. And this is our first night, so we're running through some things, getting kids registered. But I did want to kind of go through the audience like I used to do for my Nashville Network warm-up show days. And since we're doing VBS, I was curious if any of y'all have a VBS memory from your childhood that you remember, a particular VBS or a story or something. And surely we're going to participate because I will force you to. Michael Renfro, what's a VBS you remember? You didn't go? David and Goliath. All right. Who likes the David and Goliaths? Gigi, you've got a good VBS story. You have 27 children? Wait. Oh, talking to the mic.
Just telling Betty and Jackie, when we lived in Selma, we would have a contest to see who could bring the most children to VBS. And one night, Elizabeth and Sammy brought 27, so they won the prize.
Woo. We need a prize for that. We have prizes for visitors, though. If you bring visitors, we have a prizes. The Chick-fil-A on McFarland and Sonic has donated us some nice little gift card prizes. So any of the Chick-fil-A's would help. Anybody else good VBS memories? Or I remember one that we did for an area of Nashville where I was growing up. It was interesting. The people we were picking up on a bus were not our regular attendees and members, and we had an ear piercing during VBS that was unplanned. So that's always a memory that stands out. Now, who in here likes the book of Esther? Who's studied Esther? Who hasn't studied it in a while? And I'm having fun with the adults now because we got some kids registered and playing games. They're about to get in here. And luckily, Justin's going to sing for you guys, not me. But, as Zadix comes through. How are you, Zadix? Good. What's one of the most interesting things about the book of Esther compared to the other 65 books in the Bible? Bailey?
It does not mention God.
It does not have the word God or Yahweh or Jehovah or Abba. Well, then why is it in the Bible? That's what we're going to be learning about, all of us. But I think what's going to be interesting as we go through this for the next 4 weeks is that we are going to see that even though God isn't mentioned, he is throughout. He's kind of pulling the strings, so to speak, all the way throughout. So God's always with us. And it's kind of interesting, too, to do this because there's no special effects, no parting of the Red Sea, no killing of giants, no manna from heaven, just choices that people make in a world that does not follow their God. And Brady got a haircut, and it looks good. And I've embarrassed him, so. Now, Joe Barger, I know you'll have a comment. Mr. Barger.
What would you like me to say?
Well, something that can be repeated.
Well, we're glad everybody's here tonight, and VBS brings back great memories. I met my first girlfriend at VBS.
Where's Alexa?
She's still right there.
So we have confirmed Alexa is Joe Barger's last girlfriend. That's always good to know. Well, now I'm going to warm up the kiddies here. Now, this is interview time for all my students here. Who knows what we don't have one here because we've got a, president in the White House. But a king and a queen, if any of y'all were kings or queens or got to be a prince or a princess for a day, what would y'all were kind of over everything. What's something fun y'all would want to order people to have to do? This is Webb, I'm afraid.
Go to the shooting range.
Go to the shooting range day. That's something the king could order. What else? What's something if you were the king and you wanted to say everybody had to eat this first when their meal versus what your mom or dad may say? What's something you'd want to eat? What's something you'd want to eat? Do you like ice cream? Yes, ice cream. Ice cream would be good. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to go to an adult here because Miss Becky, I know Miss Becky has ideas. If y'all can think in your head, if Miss Becky were queen for a day, what do y'all think she might want to make as a rule?
Brussels sprouts.
That we eat them or ban them?
We'll eat them every day.
I'm going to have to go to a new kingdom. I love cabbage, but not that. Anybody else? Come on. Brady, oh, that's okay. Brady, come on. What's something you would want to do? I bet, what's something baseball related you would want to make a law or rule if you were the king?
Hit a home run every time.
Hit a home run every time, so you wouldn't strike out. You would change the rules for you. Some people do that. All right, I think we are close to 6:45 of what we're going to do, and I'm going to try to round up the other ones back here. Mr. Justin is going to lead us in some songs, and the adults, you guys participate too. I laugh when I sing with the younger ones because the songs that I remember singing in the 1970s that were not Bee Gees, that were kind of religious, they're the golden oldies now, but we thought they were new ones. So, but like I said, everybody join in, and Justin's going to get us wound up.
All right. I'm going to come on up here. Excuse me, girl. All right. So it's good to see all of y'all here. Oh, looky here on the front row, some little ones. All right. This is exciting. Well, all right. Well, everybody, let's stand up. Let's stand up, everybody. All right. Y'all know this one? I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. We'll allow some people to come in. All righty. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy. Where? To stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart, down in my heart. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. Okay, here's the next verse. All right, this is fun to see the little ones here. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart. Down in my heart. I've got the peace that passes understanding down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus, in my heart, down in my heart, and I'm so happy. I think we can clap. Very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. I've got the wonderful love of my blessed Redeemer way down in the depths of my heart. Down in the depths of my heart. Down in the depths of my heart. I've got the wonderful love of my blessed Redeemer way down in the depths of my heart. Where? Down in the depths of my heart to stay. And you can clap, and I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart, down in my heart, and I'm so happy, so very happy. I've got the love of Jesus in my heart. All right, we're going to go to the next one. You can stay standing. Now, sometimes we call this Rise and Shine, or I sometimes heard it called Arky Arky. Go on to the next one. Okay, the Lord said to Noah, there's going to be a floody, floody. Lord said to Noah, there's going to be a next to get those children out of the muddy, muddy children of the Lord. Let's start that all over because it's going to say, get those children. Clap then. I got to do so. I don't think I need a mic. Okay. The Lord said to Noah, there's going to be a floody, floody. Get those children out of the muddy children of the Lord. Well, Noah, he built him. We built him an ark like Noah. We built him an ark. He built it out of the children of the Lord. The
We're getting very, very, very close. And what we're going to do these next few weeks, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to have a little reenactment for everybody here of some of the different some of the different chapters in Esther that we're studying. And then our last night, what we're going to do, and once we finish, we're going to celebrate like our Jewish friends still do today. There's a feast of Purim, which celebrates a lot of the activities and things that happen in Esther. And that's going to be the last week, but we need all of the adults here for that too, because we will do the pantomime and act out the play, but there's audience participation where you get to boo the villains and cheer the heroes, and you'll have noisemakers, and Hunter will help us make a lot of noise. Hunter Wilkins will, and Mike, and all kind of people. So that will be a lot of fun. But what I'm going to ask everybody to do right now is, before we get started, I am going to ask everybody if you'll bow your head with me, and we'll say a quick prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you at this time just so excited and so thankful for your majesty and your awesomeness and just the way that you created this world for us and the way that you take care of us. And Father, we're all so excited here tonight. It doesn't matter if we're 3 months to 100, excited to be studying your word and studying a book in your Bible. But we are, Father, so excited to see these young people, the children, excited because, as you well know, they are the future generations of the church, and we're just so thankful for them and their parents and other members of the family that bring them, support them, and encourage them. And Father, as we study over the next month the book of Esther, help us to realize that even though it may not be totally visible to us, that you're with us at all times, and that we're in a tough situation. And sometimes, Father, we definitely feel like this world is not our home or my home, and that we're passing through. But help us realize we are here for a purpose, and we never know when the moment is going to arise when we can represent you and stand up for you. And we ask that you bless us as we study. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, one other thing I'm going to ask everybody to do real quick. This is adults and kids, just to kind of get ready. I want everybody to just close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes and just kind of clear your heads and minds. We're not going to do downward facing dog or anything, but everybody just clear your minds. And think about the fact that we're going to be going back, and while this is a story, it's not a story from a book. It's not a Star Wars or Star Trek or Frozen. We're going to be studying words from God's Bible, which is His words. But we're going to be going back, way before Jesus, to the kingdom of Persia. And a very interesting time, and there's going to be a very interesting party going on. So now we'll give about 30 more seconds for us to gather our thoughts and minds, and then we're going to have the kickoff of Esther for a time such as this.
Many will recall that the children of Israel were once held as slaves and captives in the country known as Babylon. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were some of these Israelites. Years later, the Israelites were allowed to return to their homes in Canaan. However, some stayed behind in Babylon. This story is about some of those people and about how one of these young Israelite girls saved all her relatives from an evil plot to kill them. Although we are only pretending to be characters in this story, the events portrayed actually happened in the biblical book of Esther. The Bible tells us that it was during the reign of King Xerxes, who ruled the world from modern-day India to Ethiopia, about where the country we now call Iran is located. He gave a magnificent feast for all his officials and servants, showing off the riches and wealth of his kingdom for 180 days. After all this, he gives another feast for 7 days in the garden court of his palace for all the people who were present in the citadel of Sousa. Queen Vashti also hosts a royal feast for all the women who lived in the royal palace of Xerxes.
Thank you, ladies, for attending my banquet. Since the king and all his princes and friends can enjoy themselves these 7 days, I see no reason why I cannot make merry as well.
How can we not attend a banquet ran by the queen herself?
I suppose you're right. I'm sure you all feel much honored.
Yes, Your Highness. The food and the drinks have been great, and just being in your presence, we are so grateful.
Now, which banquet do
because he thinks you are very beautiful.
He has been enjoying himself with his friends for these 7 days, and suddenly he wants to look upon me? There must be more than that.
Yes, there is. He wants you to wear your royal crown and for you to come in so that he can look at your beauty, because he thinks you are very, very beautiful indeed.
The king has had too much to drink. I am not going to parade myself before him and all his drunken friends. Tell the king that Queen Vashti refuses to come.
It's a little bit more complicated than that. He's not going to take no for an answer. I and the other 6 servants are here to escort you at once to his presence. You cannot refuse this demand.
I must not accept this offer. I will not be a spectacle to be gawked at, simply because his majesty has a whim. You must return and tell the king that I refuse to come, and that is final.
Your Majesty?
The king became very angry, and so did the husbands of the other wives at Queen Vashti's party. A few weeks later, the king was still upset.
You seem a little under the weather, Your Majesty.
He's been like this for weeks.
You know, I'm just very concerned whether I did the right thing or not. You know, banishing Queen Vashti from the throne was a very harsh thing to do.
But
don't you think I did the right thing?
it needed to be done, Your Majesty. We could not have her make a bad influence in front of the entire kingdom.
I think you're quite merciful to her because she blatantly refused what you said. If you asked for my opinion, you could have killed her for it. I think what you did was very merciful.
You know, Milky, you had a proposal that you read that day?
Ah, yes, sir. It's over here. Your Majesty, I wrote it down for you because I know you like to be reminded of your past decrees.
I thought if I read this proclamation again, it would make me happy. But I'm still very sad for it.
You know, if I may impose, if it's not an imposition, I think what we're really talking about here is we need to bring you many, many women and bring them from all over the world for your princes and for your leaders, and so they can come and be with you and come to Sousa, the capital, to the harem, and so they can be with you.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, except I wish I would have come up with that. Write that down.
Write that
I want to make sure that is written there.
You know, I'm still not sure if you did the right thing. Do you think you did the right thing? You know, she really did make me angry. She was very defiant. But, I don't know. I still make sure we did the right thing. But you know, she was extremely beautiful. And
I can assure you, Your Highness, you did the right thing.
I think what we need to do is bring all the women. Bring all the women. Bring them before you. Let them show themselves to you. I think that will make it better. Start that.
you know, this matter pleases me. So let it be written and let it be done.
Start that out.
Now a young Jewish girl named Esther and her cousin Mordecai heard the proclamation, and Mordecai decided to bring Esther to the palace to enter the contest to be the new queen of Persia.
I know, my child, but don't be frightened. God has everything planned. Trust Him.
I know, God's grace is without end. And if I put my faith and trust in Him, I know He'll help me. I'm trying. But what if the king is pleased with me? And what if he chooses me?
I think He might choose you. You have become such a beautiful young woman, and I was glad when I was able to raise you, and you have become such a wonderful young lady that I know that He must choose you. You are so beautiful.
I hope that beauty is not my only good quality.
I'm not talking about your outer beauty. All the women here are beautiful in their own right, but if it was just about outer beauty, it would be a hard choice, but it's that inner beauty that's going to win the king. It's your virtue, your kindness, your goodness. That is what's going to win his heart.
I'm not sure I really want to win his heart, but if it's what you think is best, then it's what I will do, and I'll really go for it.
Well, Hadassah, Esther, I guess I should call you Esther now, so people don't know who you really are. We need to keep that a secret. But as we go on, just know that God will be with you.
Thank you so much, Mordecai, for everything you've done for me.
God be with you.
Esther was taken to the king's palace and put into Haggai's care. Haggai was in charge of the king's women. Haggai liked Esther. She became his favorite. So Haggai quickly gave Esther beauty treatments and special food. Haggai chose 7 women servants from the king's palace and gave them to Esther. Then Haggai moved Esther and her servants into the best place where the king's women lived. Esther didn't tell anyone that she was a Jew. She didn't tell anyone about her family background because Mordecai had told her not to, and she feared for her life. Every day, Mordecai walked back and forth near the area where the king's women lived. He did that because he wanted to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. Now, before a girl could take her turn to go in before King Xerxes, this is what she had to do. She had to complete 12 months of beauty treatments. That was 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with perfumes and different kinds of makeup. When the time came for a girl to go before the king, they gave her anything she wanted from the house of the king's women. When the time came for Esther to go in, she didn't ask for anything. She only wanted Haggai to suggest what she should take. And everyone that met Esther liked her. Finally, the big day came, and King Xerxes summoned the contestants to the throne room and announced who he had chosen as the new queen.
Your Majesty, out of all these women, who did you choose to replace Queen Vashti?
I choose Esther.
Right now. Long live Queen Esther!
So Esther was selected as the new queen. But how long would she be able to keep her Jewish background a secret? How could she worship and serve God while married to an idol-worshiping king? What will Mordecai do now to fill his days with Esther as queen? Come back next week to learn more from the Bible about Queen Esther.
Thank you for our first time participants. Now we're going to do dismissal here. As I fall. It's just so wonderful to turn old. We're all the children will go through this door, not Joe Barger, but everybody else. When you're dismissed, you'll go through that door. For the first, let's see, cradle row to kindergarten, or excuse me, I'm trying to read my wife's writing. Oh, cradle roll to second grade. We'll go through here. So first, if you've got a cradle roll or somebody in the nursery, or 2 to 3 year olds, if y'all want to head that way over the bridge into the village. And we're working on audio for next week too, to get that a little bit. Not for me, for the other people. All right. Okay, now I need my K through 2 people. Actually, I need y'all to sit, because y'all are going to go with me. Y'all are the unlucky ones. For my 3 through 5th grade kids, y'all are going to go up to the craft room first, so y'all will exit through the back. And somebody's taking y'all up there, I think, to the craft room. Do y'all know where the youth room is? Well, you're with them, so you're fine. And 4 and 5 year olds, and okay, 3rd through 5th grade, go right up here. We're going up to the craft room. Yeah. And then this group, our 4 and 5 year olds, y'all are going to y'all's classroom through here. You can go on with them. Oh, y'all are so old. And luckily, y'all are now going to be through with me, and I'm going to turn this over to Justin to give to somebody. Everybody else follow me.
Okay. Whew. Quick change. Go ahead and open to the book of Esther. We're going to try to stay with what the children are talking about, specifically for those of you who have children in the classes so that y'all can be on the same page when y'all talk this evening and tomorrow and between now and next Wednesday about what Vacation Bible School is about, and you can be as familiar with the story or maybe somewhat familiar with the story so that y'all can talk together. So go ahead and open to the book of Esther. And I was not in here, but I did hear John asking everybody some questions, so trying to get everybody thinking about the book of Esther, and I heard some of those answers, so I'm glad that he was doing that. We're going to go back through maybe some of the same things as we look at the book of Esther. But before we do that, before we get into the book of Esther, I want to remind some of you and introduce some of you to something that that I do when I go through a narrative. A narrative is a story that is a story of an event. And so as I go through the narrative, these are the questions that I ask myself, and these are the questions that I'm going to ask you. So I'm going to ask you the questions before we get into the text. And every week we will revisit these questions because these questions are general enough that they apply to every narrative within the Bible. And so as we look at them, here are the questions that I'm going to ask. The one question I will ask is, did I enjoy this story? Now, for those of you that have not heard me talk about this before, that's a fair question. I know sometimes I've asked that question, and sometimes, of course I enjoyed it. It's the Bible. Well, honestly, aren't there some stories in the Bible that you just don't particularly like for some reason or another? Like, when I was 12, I liked the story of Ehud and Eglon when he stuck the sword into him, and the fat enclosed the sword and pulled it in. And now that I'm 55 and have a little weight, I don't really care for that story as much. So, there may be a story you don't like, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it's not true. It doesn't mean you hate the Bible. It just means for some reason that story is not something that you like, or something about that story you don't like. That's okay. I don't like the story of the fall of man because it says something about who we are. All right? And then as we read these stories, the next question I want us to answer is this: how do the events of this story, of this section of Scripture, remind me of life today? These are real people in real situations having dealt with real things. So how does that remind me of life today? So as we read the story or sections of the story, you might see something that jumps out to you. I've experienced something like that. I've seen something like that. And so how does it remind me of life today? Third question is, how would I react if I were this character in the story? You know, for instance, in this story, if you were Mordecai and you were having to allow your cousin that you were raising, your relative that you were raising, you allow her to go to be with the king in that way, how would you feel? What would you do? Would you have done it? Or would you not have done it? And how would you react in the story? Again, what morals or lessons can I learn from these events? That applies to the Bible, definitely. As I'm reading through this, what are the things I can learn from it? Another question is, how is this, how is this story disconcerting to me? Disconcerting is the fancy word for how does it bother me? How does this story just eat at me? This may be why you don't like a story, but sometimes the text hits too close to home, and that's why I don't like it. Because the message hits to something that I need to change about me, and that's disconcerting. It causes conflict within me. And then the sixth question, I won't ask this question, but you need to ask yourself this question. How will I change because of this text or because of the events in this story? So let's go to the book of Esther. And I know we've just seen a well-done skit, even though Mordecai skipped some lines and put them at the end instead of the beginning. And Esther, bless her heart, she caught up with me and stayed with me. It was very impromptu, but we made it. So let's kind of skim through this and let's set the stage. Now, we started here with Vashti's refusal, but let's set the stage by reading the first part of the chapter here in Esther chapter 1. Now it was the days of Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, who reigned from India to Ethiopia. So you put a map up in your mind of India to Ethiopia. This is a large area that he is ruling, that he is reigning. He sat on the throne in Sousa, the capital. It was in the 3rd year of his reign that he gave a feast for all his officials and servants. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles of the governors and provinces were before him, while he showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor and pomp of his greatness for many days. 180 days. This was a party. 180 days, half a year, 6 months. He's having a party. And when these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in Sousa, the citadel, both a great feast, a great and small, a feast lasting for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. So after he finished the 180-day party with all of the royal people, he gave a week-long festival for the common man. There were white cotton curtains and violet hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple and silver rods and marble pillars and couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble and mother of pearl and precious stone. Drinks were served in golden vessels, vessels of different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king. And drinking was according to this edict. There is no compulsion, for the king had given orders to all the staff of his palace to do as each man desired. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the palace that belonged to Ahasuerus. So that's the setting. So we know what's happened. So now it's on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, that the events happened that we just witnessed, that we just saw the skit for. And you can kind of read through this through the end of the first chapter. And as we're skimming here, here's an overview of what goes on. We just saw it, but let me remind you. The king decides, hey, I want all these guys to see how beautiful my queen is. So he asks her to come in, and the text is not very specific, but he wants her to wear her crown. And there may be an implication he wants her to wear his crown, or the crown, and show off her beauty. Vashti realizes, okay, he's drunk. He's had a little too much, a lot too much. And this isn't really what he needs to be doing, so she refuses. She takes the modest way out. No, I'm not going to do this. And accordingly,
The king is upset. The officials are upset because, after all, you've got to keep your women in check. And they weren't, and she was not. She was not submissive. And so then he, at the very least, banishes her. And that sets up the story for Esther. So before we go on, to chapter 2, let's talk for a moment and ask a few questions. Think about these questions, these general questions that I asked just a minute ago. And I'll start with one of these and I'll go somewhere else and then come back to these. Do you enjoy this first chapter where the king throws a 187-day party and everybody's drunk? And that's why I asked that question. This isn't one of those high moments in somebody's life, is it? So along those lines then, what type of person, how would you describe Xerxes or King Ahasuerus? How would you describe him? What type of person is he? That is an open-ended question, so the floor is yours. Oh, he drank a lot. Okay, so the drinking a lot may have altered his reasoning skills. Okay, let's put it nicely. Arrogant. Okay, he has a godlike complex, right? He's arrogant. I mean, I'm king, right? I can do what I want, and I want to show everybody how good I am. And some scholars say this is after a long war, and he is showing how good he still is, even though they may have been defeated. I think that's what I read. But he still wants to show how wonderful his kingdom is. He's a politician still. You know, no, this isn't a bad thing. Look how good everything is. Right. All right. So there's another side to him, isn't there? As arrogant, as godlike as he might be, as much of a drunk as he seems to be, he realizes, I'm not going to make everybody do that. There's no compulsion for everybody to drink. If you don't want to drink, don't drink. So that's a good side to him. So we'll point that out. What do you mean by that? Okay, so he had a control issue. That brings up this question that's on my page here. How were women treated in ancient Near Eastern cultures such as this? Property. They were property. Now, bring that into mind. The queen is the queen, but she is the property of the king. And so he has the ultimate say. He has the authority. He's the one that can tell her what to do and when to do it. She is his property. She ranks just above the slaves and the children. She is property. Maybe ranks up there with his favorite dog, but she's property. Now, with that understanding, when we get to Esther, I want you to be thinking about Esther walking into this situation. What is she feeling? What is she thinking? We're not there yet, but hold that thought in mind. How does the king misuse his authority and power? All right. So in one way, he says it's not mandatory that everybody gets drunk and drinks, but it is mandatory that she comes to see me when I call her. So he does have this control, this authority, and he's using it for his own glory. I'm going to tell her what to do. She's going to do it, and everybody's going to say, "Man, King, you got it good." Now that's his idea, I think, in this story. So we'll come back to my next question. So what about this chapter, what in this chapter that we just read, how does this remind me, or how is this like life today? And if you want to go the other direction, how is this not like life today? We'll talk about that too. What's similar, what's different? Again, open-ended question.
Try to give your everything.
Yeah, we need to give her everything. That's a good moral. We'll talk about those in just a minute. Okay, there is, even though, as the old Marlboro commercial said, or was it Virginia Slim's commercial said, you've come a long way, baby. Even though women have come a long way in their rights and things, there is still within society a sense in which women are made objects more than they are people. We got a long way to go. I think there have been great improvements. I mean, voting, ownership, buying property, things of those natures. There are so many things that are better, but society, and I say society still makes women an object. Amy and I were having this conversation earlier that you look on social media and it's not just society does it, girls do it to themselves. The way they take pictures and pose for pictures and then they put them on social media, they are making themselves an object. And even Christian girls are making themselves an object by the way they post and the things that they wear. And I know, yes, we need to teach the boys to control their thoughts and their eyes, but we also need to teach people not to make themselves an object, but to identify as a person. So I think there's two sides to that. So yes, they're so similar. Women are still somewhat treated as objects, not so much as a person. Okay. More so by those people who seem to have the same type personality, power-hungry, narcissistic type people than maybe King Ahasuerus is. Maybe by those that are self-promoting more than they are caring of others. How else does this remind you of life today? The government does not always care about what's going on. He threw a party for the little people, but one week out of 180 days. Maybe he's not so concerned, but I think he's making it look like he's concerned. All right, there's the toying with the populace. So that's similar. What about the big elephant in the room, alcoholism? The consumption of alcohol. Is that a problem?
I was at a city council meeting last night, and it was amazing at how much of the discussion was over alcohol use and abuse.
It's a problem.
There was 2 or 3 different entities there to ask for permission to have open bars, do various things with alcohol in this city. And then there was, the reason I was there is wondering why freedom of alcohol was supplied to our college students so freely to let them see how drunk they could get. And there had to be a permanent issue for that, and there has been.
Yeah, and there's a problem in society in general with drunkenness. And we can see in this story, what might this story teach us about the dangers of being drunk? Somebody already said it inhibits your reasoning skills. I watched a video years ago that was not produced by any Christian group. It was produced by a medical group about when someone is really drunk. And they used someone playing darts in a bar. And it was amazing how quickly people's aim and focus was lost after just one drink. And they were talking about the dangers of drinking and driving. And if they'd show people throwing darts before they had a drink, and they were hitting near the bullseye and having good scores, and then they had a drink and they were all over the place. They had 2 drinks, and they were even farther. The 3rd drink they were missing entirely. And this was people of all different sizes and ages and genders. That's just, and yet we still imbibe in those things. And so this story tells us there's some problems here. Ephesians 5 and verse 18 says, "Do not be filled with wine in which there is much dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit." So don't turn to alcohol as your God, turn to God as your God. That's what Paul is saying there. We kind of talked around some of the morals, the lessons we can learn. I'm going to ask this one. I think we've answered it. I'm going to ask it again. How does this story bother you? What's disconcerting to you about this story?
How they treated the women of today. I mean, the very idea, we're going to groom a young girl for a year to see if we can get her ready to be beautiful enough to satisfy you.
Well, that's chapter 2. We're getting there, but yeah. Yeah, that part bothers me. It also bothers me what this seems to entail. When we tell this story, when we tell chapter 2 to the children, we say it is a beauty contest. She was pulled into the king's harem. We're adults in this room. What might be involved? Spending one night with the king in your turn. Does that bother you like that bothers me? Right. All the young maidens were called, so it was, you have to go. So it was somewhat forced upon her. It was like a tryout of sorts. Well, let me put this nicely. This was the first episode of The Bachelor. And this is what this was, and Esther got the rose. I mean, that's what this is. And all the things that you see there could be involved. And all these beauty treatments that she went through for a year before they all did this. Now, so when looking at Esther, how would you behave in this story with Esther and Mordecai? If you were one of those characters, how would you behave in the story? If you were Esther, what would you be thinking through all of this? Yeah, she is in, I'm dating myself here, a catch-22. No, she either does or she doesn't, and if she does, she violates one thing, but if she doesn't, then something else. So there's a point at which she is stuck. Now, let me back up a little bit. Why are Mordecai and Esther living in Sousa? Okay, so there was a time, now Mordecai is a descendant of Judah. He's in the tribe of, from the tribe of Judah, Benjamin, all right? So it was during the time of Jeconiah, Jehoiakim, that when Jeremiah was prophesying, the children of Israel were taken captive into, the children of Judah, the nation of Judah, was taken captive into, starts with a B, ends with Babylon. They were taken captive into Babylon, okay. So, and then Babylon is eventually conquered by the Medes and the Persians. Xerxes is the Persian king. Now, how many years have passed? They were supposed to be there 70 years. After 70 years, a king comes and his name is Cyrus. Cyrus makes a decree, an edict that any of the Jews that want to go back to Jerusalem can go back to Jerusalem. That was 70 years after their captivity. And some of them go back. Some of them stay. Esther's family and Mordecai stay in Sousa. When you're a card holder, a citizen of one country, and you live in another country, what do we call that now? Expatriate? Okay, so they're expatriates. They're still Jews, but they're living in Persia, they're living in Sousa, and they have been for generations. But they still claim their Jewish heritage, they still claim their Jewish nationality, they still have their Jewish card, their Jewish IDs. But that's where they are. That's what gets them there. Now this is, years, decades, a century or so after captivity, they're still here. And they're living there and in this culture. Esther, being a young woman, has never lived in Judah as far as we know. She doesn't know what that country's like. All she knows is Persia and what her parents and then her cousin, whether that's first, second cousin, first cousin once removed, third cousin, I don't know, cousin. We always think, well, then he must have been an older child of her father's brother or sister. We don't know. The term cousin is broad, right? Some texts just say kinsman. He's related somehow, but old enough that he has raised her now. We don't know how long, but he's done his best. And now they're here together. Why do you think they hide her identity? Okay, even at that stage, okay, they weren't really Persians. Even though she had lived nowhere else, there's still a stigma against them being Jews. So there's that. And we will find later in the chapter that someone was going to be a little upset at the Jews and want to kill them. All of them, all because of one event. By the end of the chapter, Esther is made queen. That's kind of what we closed with here. And after she's made queen, and then we'll see this next week. Mordecai is going to save the king's life, but we'll get into that next week. By all outward appearances, things seem to be going good for Esther at this point. What do you think she imagined it would be like? We don't know. I'm just asking. When she goes to the king's palace to be a part of this beautification and pageantry and all that's going to go on with that, what do you think she was thinking and imagining might happen? Okay, so if you didn't hear what Randy said, no matter what happened, more than likely Esther would have never gone home. She would have stayed in the palace as a courtier, as a lady in waiting, as a part of the harem. But she wouldn't have been queen. But she would have never gone home. So no matter what happens, she's facing this with, this isn't a Cinderella story, in that sense. She's facing this with some trepidation. My life is going to change no matter what. She's a young woman, maybe an older teen, early 20s, and she's facing this new life that she knows really nothing about.
Wasn't it more of Mordecai's direction when she was following what he was?
Yeah, Mordecai encourages her, but as someone else pointed out, this was an edict from the king for all the young ladies to be brought forward. So all were supposed to be brought, and then a group was chosen from the large group. So.
And where it's coming from, he's the one that kept warning her, don't let them know that you're.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and maybe because of his experience, we don't know how old he is, but he may be old enough to remember more, and the stories and how they were taken to captivity and how they've been mistreated, and all Jews would know their history and how Jews are always mistreated. Sometimes I wonder if the Jews are, it's actually in Fiddler on the Roof, when Teve turns to God and says, I know we're your chosen people, but could you choose someone else? I know, just every once in a while. So I wonder sometimes if Jews like, God, glad you chose us, but look, this isn't working out very well. I know Jeremiah did that, didn't he? Jeremiah said, God, you tricked me. You told me to go tell people your message, and when I do, they don't like it, and they do mean things to me. You have tricked me. And when I say I'm not going to talk anymore, I have to keep talking because it's like a fire in my bones. God, you pulled the wool over my eyes here. Why did you choose me? Could you choose somebody else? We see that in individuals. I wonder if, as a nation, that maybe they felt the same way sometimes.
Well, you asked a while ago, how does this relate to today? And that part, to me, relates to the American Indian. Just a couple of generations ago, they didn't want anybody to know their heritage. It was not good news. And one thing that Dib and I've learned that I think probably most of us don't know, as late as 1968, it was illegal for an American Indian to own land in the United States.
And there, that kind of helps you see the situation.
And so they didn't want anybody, especially if they wanted a house to own, they couldn't let anybody know that they had that heritage. And that kind of blew me away, but Congress changed that law in 1968 before they could own property.
I didn't know it was that late, but that shows you kind of the situation there. Go ahead. And so we have all these things that are going on, and there's so many things when we read these stories. That's why I want to remind us that these are real people and real situations. And when we read them, sometimes we need to read them as if, remembering that these are real. And try to think, what are they going through, and pointing out where the similarities are, and even the differences, but the similarities. As I want to talk about Esther for just a little bit longer, as we've got about, I think, 15 minutes or so. So she was taken. She was either forced or at best coerced, according to Jewish tradition. At least she was reluctant to be part of this parade. But she was going to be away from the family she knew for the rest of her life. A year to get ready to spend time with a man who is not a Jew. Wasn't that against the law of Moses? But yet here she finds herself in that situation. So Esther's rise, she finds favor with Haggai. He puts her in the best place. Others are scrapping for success, but she seems dignified, and she takes us in stride. She's surrounded by luxury she would not have known, temptations and influences new to her. All these young women were using all that they had and could get to win the bachelor king's heart. Esther appears different. There's something different about her. We don't know all the specifics, but she's not scrapping. She's asking, what do you think is best? What do you think I should do? So she's not fighting, she's learning. She displays an elegance of grace. She finds favor. That means she lifted up grace before his face. Indicates she thought even though it was against her will to be there, she did not have a bad attitude about it. Ouch. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't want to be there? How's your attitude? Let's be honest. Sometimes when I'm somewhere where I don't really want to be, I really have to fight myself to whatever. The happiest place on earth is supposed to be Disney World. All right? You go to Disney World, and it is the stroller capital of the world. And people do not know how to drive them. And I sometimes fight impatience at places like that. I want to have a good time, but sometimes there are people in the way and strollers. And I want to look at those moms and dads and say, they're too young to remember they were here. Wait till they can walk. But they wouldn't listen. But so we're somewhere we don't necessarily want to be in that situation, so we have to check our attitude. Esther didn't want to be in this situation. She didn't volunteer for it. She was coerced. She was forced, but yet she's there, and her attitude seems to be, okay, I'm here. I'm going to make the best of it. What can I learn from that? A whole lot. A whole lot about my attitude. It seems that she sensed more of God's care, even though God's not mentioned in the book. You get the idea that she knows he's there. Among the pampered, the entitled, and the indulged, Esther stood out for her inner qualities as well as her outer beauty. She had a dignified restraint. Let's talk about that for a minute. Dignified restraint. That's that air of mystery. They don't know who she is from nationality. She's not admitting that. Who are you? Where did you come from? You have a Persian name, but we don't know your family. Who are you? Where did you come from? She's going to keep it a secret. Restraint is good. Keep confidences. Maybe that's what enticed the king. She's not telling a lot about herself. That means she's going to keep anything that she knows about the kingdom. I can see all sorts of things here. She remained teachable. She was learning from everyone around her how she should be. She followed Mordecai's instructions, even as queen, we'll see. She would follow Mordecai's instruction. She learned from Haggai. She didn't think she knew it all. She asked, what do you think I should take? She was willing to learn from others. Maybe that's an important lesson for us to learn. Yes. What's the rest of that statement be? As wise as a serpent and as harmless are meek as doves. So yes, the idea of meekness draws a picture of a large beast brought under control, like a large ox. Or the idea that's in my mind is, have you ever noticed that they don't put them in circuses anymore because now it's cruelty? But they used to have elephants in circuses, and they used to just have a rope around the elephant's ankle, and that rope was tied to a stake. Do you know how much effort it would take for that elephant just to go boop and pull that stake up? Not much at all. But that elephant has been trained so that now it is meek. It's like horses. You don't necessarily always have to tie the horse's reins. You just drop them, and those reins are pulling on the horse, and the horse knows I'm supposed to stay. There's a meekness, strength under control. I have a statement written down here. The best leaders, the best teachers, and the best parents, and the best people remain teachable. What do I mean? What does that mean? Do you agree or disagree? And why? I'm seeing this in Esther. Once we think we've arrived, we stop learning. We stop being teachable. Well, that's okay. Not that I've already attained. The only one that arrived, the only one that was perfect in his life was Jesus. The rest of us are still working at it. We're still pressing on. We're still trying. We're still reaching forward. So let's become like Esther in this, asking God to help us cultivate character, a good character, His character. Ask Him to help us to lose focus on the superficial and to see what's right and what's true. Ask Him to help us to live for His glory. And then trust Him. Trust that He is going to answer. Trust that His way is the best way. I got about 4 minutes or so till 8. Any other thoughts? Because I don't want to go into the next chapter. Well, we got 5 minutes, so let me do this then. I mentioned they were expatriates. In what sense are we expatriates? Okay. This world is not my home. I'm just passing through. Paul would say it this way in Philippians, is it 3 and verse 20? For our citizenship is in heaven. We tend to think that, I got it written down here, Philippians 3 verse 20. Peter talks about us being sojourners and aliens. In fact, in 1 Peter 1 and verse 1, he says we are exiles in dispersion. Exactly like Esther and Mordecai. We're in the wrong place. We don't belong here. There's an old song that we used to sing when I was a kid. Here we are but straying pilgrims, here our path is often dim, but the cheer is on our journey, still we sing this wayside hymn. Y'all know, okay, about 4 of us, 5 of us? Okay, good. All right. We don't sing that one much anymore, but that's who we are, isn't it? We're wandering through. We're living as foreigners. What does that mean? If our citizenship is in heaven and we are just here living as expatriates, if you will, what does that mean for our life? Okay, keep focused on where we're from and where we're going. Okay, don't get caught up on where we are, but who we are. Okay, our mission is to take others with us. I saw a sermon, I may have preached it after I saw it for somebody else, about being aliens and how, what do aliens come to earth for? To conquer it? So we're aliens, what are we supposed to do? We're here to conquer. All right, so take me to your leader. Let me conquer. All right? And then the other thing they do is we get people to become like us. All right, so we need to be getting people to join our side, to join our team. That's what aliens do. But what happens when aliens forget they're aliens? Like, my favorite Martian, They forget where their citizenship is, and they forget who they're supposed to be here. They forget their mission. And so we don't need to forget where we're from. We don't need to forget we're aliens. We don't need to forget we're expatriates. We don't need to forget we're just pilgrims traveling through. We need to remember where we're from and where we're going and keep that in mind. That's the reason Jesus was able to wash the disciples' feet, even Peter's and Judas's, because he knew where he was from and he knew where he was going. I think the reason Mordecai and Esther can handle the situation they're in is because they know where they're from and they know whom they serve. They may not like everything about the situation, but they're going to do their best in that situation. So, next week, this night, we'll continue the story. We'll look at what happens as Esther becomes queen and Mordecai saves the king's life and everything that goes on between the next 3 chapters, I think. I don't remember what we end with. Do you remember what we end with next week? Okay, all right. So we'll be in the story, at least chapters 3, 4, and maybe 5 in the book of Esther. If you want to read those chapters, that'll kind of give us an idea of where we're going. I'm finished for my part of it. I don't know. Are they coming back in here? Okay, so we're dismissed. Go find if you have chillins, go find them. No. Don't leave them here.